I'm Carl Monger. I'm an Army veteran, and it's my privilege to welcome you to this first social distancing edition of Trophy Club's Memorial Day observance. Memorial Day is a day a veteran both loves and dreads. It's a day to honor and remember those who gave their lives in service to their nation. It's a day of gut-wrenching, second-guessing, and missing someone fiercely. Today you're going to hear from the mayor of Trophy Club, Nick Sanders, several veterans with poems and stories, memories from their service, and we'll close the observance with the playing of taps by Officer Mitchell.
Would you pray with me? Lord, we thank you for this day that we can gather together as a community and just take some time and reflect on those individuals that gave the ultimate sacrifice, gave all of themselves, Lord, in service of you and of their country. God, we just ask that you would protect their families, Lord, that you would be with their families, give them grace and peace to deal with the losses that they've had. God, we thank you so much for this country and the blessings that you've given us here, that we have the opportunity because of people like this that we celebrate today, that we can worship you in the manner that we wish to, that we can serve you in the manner that we wish to because of those freedoms, because of the sacrifices that so many have made. So God, we just ask for the protection of those that are still in harm's way today, those that are still out fighting. And God, we just ask for your protection for those here at home as well who serve those that are overseas and the families of those that are overseas. God, again, put a reflective lens on all of our hearts today, God, so that we can all think heavily on the sacrifices that were made. And again, we thank you for the many blessings that you bestowed on us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
In May of 2016, Trophy Club held its first Memorial Day event at Medlin Cemetery. We're here today to once again remember the lost soldiers, but we're not gathered in a crowd because of social distancing. But we are here to remember. Years ago, this particular day was celebrated as Decoration Day, and it began after the Civil War when the Grand Army of the Republic decided it was time to place flags at all the graves of the Union war soldiers. We gather at this historic cemetery to remember the men and women who gave of their lives for this country. Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address words that inspire many of those military heroes to join the fight for freedom said, "We here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain." History seems to point to this patriotic tradition of placing flags at the graves of soldiers that began over 100 years ago. It was in 1966 that President Johnson named Waterloo, New York as the birthplace of this national event, but although it really began much earlier than that. From the beginning of our nation's history, the men and women of our armed services have embodied the most fundamental American values: selfishness, patriotism, and dedication. Today we recognize those values and pledge ourselves that we will not forget what those values mean for us today and for the citizens of the United States in the future. May you be blessed as you remember the sacrifice these people made.
Johnny never came marching home again, but he did return. He arrived in a box with a star-spangled and blood-striped flag draped with care. When Johnny didn't come marching home again, so long, so long. They gave him a funeral welcome then. So long, so long. It was a warrior's funeral, complete with a 21-gun salute, a lonesome rendition of taps, and a finely folded consolation flag. The same flag that came draped on Johnny's coffin. The boys held back tears, the men stood tall, the ladies, one by one they called. They mentioned Johnny's name on the news. They remembered his life and honored his memory. They said that they would always remember their hometown hero. They all felt the loss when Johnny didn't come marching home. Johnny didn't enlist to become a cog in the great war machine, but he knew the ultimate price might have to be paid when he raised his right hand and said, "I, Johnny Citizen, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me, according to the regulations in the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So help me God." When his country called, he did his duty. With a lump in his throat and with pride on his side, Johnny went off to fight. Let reverence and remembrance reign this day. So long, so long. Remember the ultimate sacrifices made. So long, so long. Johnny prayed. He prayed every day he awoke alive, and doubly so at night, to live to fight another day, so help him God. And God was there on Johnny's lips as he took his final breaths. So were the fading memories of home. So were mom and dad. So were brother and sister. So were friends and lovers. And so was this final scene. A warrior's funeral, complete with a 21-gun salute, a lonesome rendition of taps, and a finely folded consolation flag. This is what Johnny saw as he looked up at these foreign skies. He never asked why. He knew that this was his time. He knew that this was his duty. And Johnny said his last prayer and his final goodbyes. No fanfare, no fame, just another life given, a sacrifice made, and this deadly game named freedom. So we do our patriotic part. So long, and be grateful and thankful for this warrior's heart. So long, and remember the meaning of this day when all the Johnnies didn't come marching home. Thank you.
My name is Zachary Savalas. I served in the Marine Corps and was fortunate to be assigned as a rifleman with 1st Battalion, 5th Marines. I served with other infantrymen like Sergeant De La Garza, Lance Corporal Joe Jackson, and Lance Corporal Sean O'Connor. After completing boot camp, then infantry training at School of Infantry, myself and a handful of others checked into our prospective unit. O'Connor checked in at the same time, and about a week and a half later, we'd become assigned roommates. He'd been in the fleet for about 2 years already, being stationed at 8th and I. After his tenure had concluded there, he finished his contract as a rifleman with the 1st Battalion, 5th Marines. Months led into years of training, honing in our skills, tactics, and knowledge of weapons and war. Sean and I were saw gunners together, so the time spent in the barracks was accompanied with time in the field, completing all types of exercises. We would do a multitude of things together, like ask each other infantry knowledge, do dry runs, rehearsals, and live fire exercises. We worked fluidly together, hung out in the barracks, and eventually knew each other so much that we grew sick of one another in a brotherly way. In December 2010, we had been informed that our unit was designated for staying in Afghanistan. Shortly after, O'Connor told our platoon that he extended his contract so he could make the deployment with us. We all ridiculed him for doing so and told him that he could have gone out of the Marine Corps sooner and been a civilian. He realized that, but wouldn't let the Marines that had become family go to war without him. Shortly after, 1-5 had left the States, bound for combat and staying in Afghanistan. The Taliban had put up a fight. IEDs littered the ground as if Earth created them and spat them out in spontaneous locations. Rockets and bullets from the Taliban's weapons flew overhead on a consecutive basis, with their screams and crack-like sounds impacting objects, scaring us and making us laugh at the same time. I can say that despite the situation at hand, I felt secure and trusted my Marines to the left and right of me, Marines like Sean. Approximately a month into our deployment, we sustained our first loss. Lance Corporal Joe Jackson. Joe and I were in the same platoon, same squad, and same team, which consists of 4 Marines. Losing Joe was shocking and felt unbearable. However, this event didn't stop our unit's objective. Our unit continued to conduct the mission at hand. Time would pass by, and we would continue to lose more men, either casualties or killed in action. June is a rather significant month in U.S. military history. It's the month of D-Day landings at Normandy in 1944. It was a bold maneuver planned by military strategists, executed by some of America's finest. Many lives were lost during the summer of June 1944. 67 years later, America and 1st Battalion, 5th Marines had lost another son. Lance Corporal Sean O'Connor was killed in action. Excuse me. Sean was a senior Marine among 2 others at an intersection of dirt roads. The 3 of them were in a vehicle, providing security and establishing a presence for the locals. They were posted at this position for hours, rotating watches and positions within the up-armored truck. They would go from driver to passenger to turret gunner. All of the positions were vital and played a key role that would coordinate with other Marines in the general area. During their time in observation, a member of the Taliban had darted across the intersection and moved around within the alleyways. The SOP didn't allow Sean and the 2 other Marines to pursue. They were just told to keep eyes on. Some time had passed, and the Taliban popped around the corner, blindly aiming a rocket at their vehicle and pulled the trigger. Sean was in the driver's seat, and the rocket impacted the wheel well right where he was sitting. Reports have said that Sean immediately lost consciousness from the blast. The Marine in the passenger seat had been thrown from the vehicle, and the turret gunner Marine hit his head on the roof, covering the turret, rendering him unconscious. QRF, Quick Reaction Force, reacted, relieved the Marines of their post, replaced them, and took the casualties to the FOB nearby. By the time the Marines driving Sean had arrived at the FOB, Sean was gone. The only thing left to do was call for helicopters to pick him up and escort him home. I was very fortunate to be one of the stretcher bearers to take him to the helicopter on his first step in his journey home. June 12, 2011, Lance Corporal Sean Michael Nicholas O'Connor was killed in action conducting combat operations in the Sangin district of Helmand Province, Afghanistan. For many of the Marines that Sean served with in Sangin, we see him and the other 16 Marines that were killed in action in our dreams and hearts. Sean was a tall, gangly Marine. He was proud of his name tapes on his camis and would often point out that had the apostrophe between the O and Connor in his last name. He would proudly and smugly tell me that he wasn't 6'2" and he wasn't 6'3", he was 6'2 and a half. He wore a size 12 boot, had numerous tattoos like many of us Marines, although he had a nipple blacked out that we all thought was a little questionable, even for us grunts. He had an odd and borderline sadistic taste of music. He had blue eyes that would turn a shade of green when we spent days and weeks in the field being worked down to the bone. I feel honored and blessed that I had the opportunity to know him and be his roommate. He was my brother and lives on through stories like this from his family, friends, and his Marines. He is deeply loved, missed, and he'll forever be with me. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Officer Brandon Buff with the Trophy Club Police Department, here to talk to you about Memorial Day. Every day is Memorial Day. Over 1.1 million people have given their lives for this great republic of ours. While we set one day a year aside for those who have given their lives, we must also remember each person we have lost had birthdays, anniversaries, and the date of their death, all of which are held dearly to the ones they have left behind. I was asked to prepare a speech about my point of view as an Army veteran and a Texas peace officer. Memorial Day was not something I thought about while actively serving. It was not until I got older and missed those that I had served with that I realized the importance of this day. Now, Memorial Day is a day I do not look forward to, a day I try not to think about, a day when it arrives I cannot get it off my mind. It is a day to reflect on those I knew and those who have been forgotten. While I may not know all the men who have come before me, who laid this foundation, I can remember them and what they have left behind for me and mine. We are not here by mistake. Do not take for granted the freedoms we have. While the pools are uncovered, grills are readied for the coming spring, do not forget these men and women and what they have accomplished. Every day, look around and see, and what you see is owed to their actions and their sacrifices. The United States is built on this. It is our job to remember them, not just one day a year, but every day. I win this with a quote from Franklin Roosevelt. Those who have long enjoyed such privileges as we enjoy forget in time that men have died to win them. Airborne all the way.
It's ironic that we're filming this Memorial Day observance because our individual liberties have been temporarily curtailed. There are some who say our freedom has been taken away because we can't go wherever we want, whenever we want, right now. The reality is, right now we're asked to give up some freedoms temporarily for the greater good. The reality is, if we don't like the leadership that took away those freedoms, then we can vote them out of office at the next election. There are countries on this planet whose citizens don't have that freedom. We have the freedom to elect our leaders, to determine our path, because of the sacrifices of men and women such as my friend Captain Paul Long. Paul was an Arkansas boy, and he was a solid guy. He was smart, fit as an Olympic athlete, he had a dry sense of humor, and a slight Arkansas drawl. And with already thinning hair at the age of 22, Paul was a guy I trusted with my life. Paul stood next to me in our first formation at Infantry Officer Basic Course. Because of the randomness of using the alphabet to line up, and Paul and I became friends. A few months later, we endured 8 weeks of misery at U.S. Army Ranger School, proudly graduating the day before Thanksgiving, 1983. I went to the 9th Infantry Division at Fort Lewis, Washington. Paul went to the 101st Infantry Division at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. A year later, Paul deployed with his battalion to perform a peacekeeping mission in the Sinai. Six months later, on the 12th of December, 1985, a plane carrying his battalion stopped to refuel at Gander, Newfoundland, on its way home for Christmas. It never got there, disintegrating into a fireball shortly after takeoff. A smuggled explosive device hidden on board by a terrorist was suspected, but never proven. I learned of Paul's death on the news, watching a list of casualty names scroll by. You know, a warrior doesn't die until the last day their name is spoken out loud, and today is a day to speak their names. Paul Long was the first of my friends to die in the service of our nation. The others, Lieutenant Colonel Lloyd Mills, Lieutenant Colonel Ken Stouse, Colonel John Keneally, First Sergeant Harvey Moore, Sergeant Blaine Mishak, Specialist Jeremy Bird, Captain Michael Nazionale, Lieutenant Colonel Roland Paixato Jr., Technical Sergeant Mark Scholl, Sergeant Mark Lee, Sergeant Stephen Kelly, Sergeant Philip Kessler, Senior Airman Derek Hughes, First Sergeant John Harrison, Lieutenant Colonel Marty Martin, and Major General Jeff Bannister. 16 names, men that I personally knew that gave their lives for your and my freedoms. Please remember the difference in patriotic holidays. Armed Forces Day is a day to honor and thank those in uniform. July 4th is a day to celebrate our freedom. Veterans Day is a day to thank a veteran. Memorial Day is a day to remember true sacrifice. Paul would tell you, don't mourn him on Memorial Day. Rather have a beverage, enjoy some sun, and within social distance rules, see your friends. He would want you to live in a way that honors his sacrifice. In a way, he bought and paid for this day for you to enjoy. In a country where we decide our destiny. Thank you, Trophy Club, the Metroport Veterans Association, the many volunteers that made this observance possible. May God hold tight the men and women who have gone on to that holy high ground, and may God bless and comfort the Gold Star families that they left behind. May we never forget the sacrifices made for our freedom. God bless Trophy Club, God bless Texas, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Mayor Sanders and the City of Trophy Club for hosting the ceremony today. The speakers that will follow me or have preceded me, Carl Monger with the Gallant Few for being the main thrust behind getting these ceremonies approved through City Council and us putting them on, and Emily Ladich for organizing and the production of this Memorial Day event. You've probably heard this before, but it's always good to remember that Memorial Day honors the memory of the fallen, those that died in the service of this country, those who truly are the real heroes of the preservation of the American way of life. We pay homage to them by speaking their names and telling their story as we recall it, so that they will not be forgotten. Virtually connecting America to her veterans. Today, I'd like to tell you about Harry Charles Inman III. Harry was born in Louisville, Kentucky on October 2nd, 1947. Harry was called up from the Army Reserves for active duty in January of 1968, just as the communists of North Vietnam had launched the Tet Offensive of 1968. And they had launched that all across South Vietnam and had taken the American embassy in Saigon. Because of that, there was an urgency to throw off the offensive without delay. Harry graduated in December of 1969 from Officers Candidate School at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, home of the Field Artillery. He took his commission in a newly formed sub-branch of Field Artillery called Air Defense Artillery. Air Defense was actually formed in June of 1968. It was really a mystery to the rest of the Army about what Air Defense actually did. But their members said, hey, we fire missiles. So it sounded like it was right up Harry's alley. I first met Harry Inman at Fort Walters in Mineral Wells, Texas. We were both starting primary rotary wing helicopter flight training. Harry rode up to formation on a Harley Davidson and later left doing a wheelie. Easy Rider had just come out at the movie theaters, and Harry had, to say the least, got an impression from that particular movie. Harry passed the free to do what I please feeling on to everyone that was present that day, including the commanding officer. He was told to lose the bike. So Harry showed up the next formation driving a Pontiac GTO, squealing tires and laying down rubber on the way in. Harry was, to say the least, not shy about anything. He kept the Harley, he just didn't ride it to formation anymore. In Mineral Wells, while going through primary flight school, Harry and I attended all on a regular basis as many of the area bars and dance halls that we could. Not really clear-headed about exactly how we graduated Class 69-50 of primary helicopter school. We were both assigned to Fort Rucker in Dothan, Alabama, for advanced flight and instrument training. I was really happy to know that we were going to the same place because Harry was a chick magnet. Harry was 8 months older than I was, but I outranked him by active duty time served. In the graduation flyer, when we graduated from flight school, I was listed as a first lieutenant, while Harry was still a second lieutenant. He got orders to Vietnam in April of 1970, while I got orders to go in May of 1970. And I wonder sometimes if the lower ranking officers were assigned faster than the higher ranking officers. The situation might have been switched, where we actually went to the other person's assault helicopter company. In the meantime, Harry had gone back to Louisville and got married before he was leaving for Vietnam. He was cocksure he was coming back home to the United States after he had served his year in Vietnam. I gave my best girl an engagement ring. I wasn't that certain. Harry was assigned and reported to the 48th Assault Helicopter Company out of Phan Rang, Binh Thong Province in South Vietnam. The company was called the Blue Stars, and it was part of the 1st Aviation Brigade. He arrived on the 6th of April, 1970. Harry was assigned to the troop carriers, better known as Slicks, called the Wild Aces Platoon. His call sign was Joker 48. Skill, not luck, was their motto. Sounded just like Harry. The Army's official account reads, the helicopter, a Bell UH-1 troop carrier model, was shot down in the landing zone by small arms fire while attempting to crawl away from the disabled aircraft. The pilot lifted his head to look back and was struck by small arms fire, flipping him over. It's a testament to Harry's leadership to look out for his men first and then for himself. The remaining three members of the crew were recovered unharmed. Harry Charles Inman III gave his life to prevent the advancement of communism in the Pacific Rim region on August 31st, 1970. Just 3 months and 25 days into his one-year tour of duty in the Republic of Vietnam. Harry would be pleased to know his fellow Vietnam veterans accomplished the mission of stopping communism by war's end. And I certainly will tell him when I see him next, if he doesn't already know. And I'll bet he already does. Harry Charles Inman III name is found on panel 7W of the Vietnam Wall, row 27, and in the Ring of Honor by the flagpole at the Veterans Memorial here in Trophy Club, Texas. I will ask you as a gesture of gratitude and recognition that you go and find his brick. Harry was 32 days short of his 23rd birthday. I remember Harry, the zany stuff we did, the good-heartedness of his personality, and how he loved to have fun. I hope this day you will remember him too. Thank you for letting me speak on Harry's behalf today. He would have been proud. May God bless you and your families, and may God bless these United States of America. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for just letting me be here today. And just I want to take a few moments just to talk about two service members that have just been very influential in my life. And I want to remember them in their service to our country. The first one is to my youngest brother, Jeffrey Gerasi. And the second one is to my college roommate, Joel Korkowski. Let's start with Joel. Joel is one of those guys. He was just oldest of two brothers, and everybody who met him loved him. He was ahead of me in school a couple of years, and my older brother, my best friend, and we even had the same football number. Joel went off to the Naval Academy, and on his way back to the Naval Academy, he just took a round trip to College Station and was convinced to stay there in College Station for the remainder of his college time. Graduated from A&M, magna cum laude in aerospace engineering, and we always gave him a hard time because he was so smart. The guy never cracked a book. And the one time he did crack a book was before his final exam of senior year, and we harassed him so bad for actually studying for his last exam that we're like, why break your streak? He still aced the exam and went on, and he actually was putting in for a pilot slot for the Navy. He did decide when he was at A&M that he didn't want to be on a ship, but he did want to be a naval aviator. So he pursued his career, was accepted, and when he was going through flight training, went on and was selected to be a fighter pilot. And his goal was to go back and to be an astronaut, a NASA pilot, just like his dad. And actually, one of his goals in life was to go and to win the award at NASA that actually bears his father's name. Unfortunately, those kind of life events happened. September 11th happened, and while he was in the Med, they were actually enforcing the no-fly zone over Iraq. When September 11th happened, being in the Med, they turned around, and when those big ships turn, and they thought for sure they were going back to Iraq, and the orders came down that they were going to Afghanistan. And he was there providing fighter support and coverage for the invasion by the time there. And Joel was called home. To join his earthly father and his heavenly father on October 18th, 2002. And we celebrate his life with his wife, his daughter, his mother, my best friends, and his youngest brother, and countless friends. And just actually Joel and his service to the country at his memorial services when I decided that I could no longer sit on the sidelines and I had to join myself. About that same time, my youngest brother, Jeffrey, had always wanted to either be a police officer or be in the military. I remember being young and growing up, there was an elementary school right across the street from us. And even as a preschooler, he would get a yellow safety helmet and go out there with a little flag and help the crossing guards direct traffic, just wanting to contribute and be a part of things. One of the things that was so crazy, and this is kind of a different time, if the crossing guard wasn't there, the traffic would actually listen to this preschooler directing traffic as kids would cross the street, and traffic would go in 3 directions. And he actually did a pretty good job. But, like so many of us, he decided to join the military. He was later deployed in Iraq. And actually, during this deployment, we actually were there together. He was in south of Iraq and in Baghdad, south of Baghdad, the southeast area, and I was north near Balad. And while he was there in Iraq, I actually had the honor of doing his re-enlistment while he was there. So he came up to Balad, and we did his re-enlistment. And I don't know how he arranged this, but he arranged it right before a big sandstorm. So not only did he get to come up there and we get to do a re-enlistment, we get to spend 2 or 3 days together, but because of the sandstorm, I think he was there for like a week, just because all flights were shut down and we couldn't go anywhere, couldn't do any ops because the storms were so bad. But while we were there in Iraq, Jeff was exposed, like a lot of folks. We don't know if it's the sand or the burn pits, but a lot of service members had trouble with their lungs and digestive system. He developed incurable stomach cancer. And during this time, he was able to do a lot of things and prepare his family for this transition in life. He was able to go see the birthplace of his Lord and Savior in Israel during this time. We were able to prepare his family and able to say our goodbyes. It takes a very special person, I think, to sign a blank check to the United States government and say, I believe in everything here that this country stands for, and I'm willing to pay for it up to and including my life. Some of those things are instantaneous, and we don't get a chance to say goodbye to folks. Sometimes we have time to prepare for things people go through and injuries people sustain from being in combat. Regardless of the circumstances and how much time we have, life here on earth is brief. And so I just challenge everybody to use these 2 examples to ask yourself, how are you spending your time here on earth, and what you can do to leave your legacy. Just here recently, just everything that's going on in the world today, there's a reoccurring verse that just constantly has been coming to my mind during this time, and I want to share with everybody. It's Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declare the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you, but plans to give you a hope and a future. So with that, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for all the people that have served our country. Thank you for just allowing us, God, to live here in this great country where we can worship you and have these type of meetings and represent our service members openly. And thank you for your time today. Thank you.
Dear American patriots, if you have taken time to watch this Memorial Day presentation, which was necessitated by the COVID-19 pandemic, preventing our normal medalling ceremony, you are to be commended for setting time aside to do so. Please feel free to share our thoughts with friends and family as your personal way of paying tribute to those who have fallen. So often, Memorial Day is looked upon as just another day for having fun, eating barbecue, swimming in the pool, and not having to work. But Memorial Day is actually America's most solemn calendar event. We have come together today to pay our respects and to honor all who have died to allow us to live in peace and freedom. You have heard that freedom is not free, but have you stopped to count the cost? It was paid for with the suffering, blood, and death of the heroes we honor today. I wrote the following poem in my humble effort to tally the real cost, so all of us will be more deeply appreciating how many of our family, friends, and neighbors sacrificed their lives so that we could live in peace. I call the tribute a time to remember each and every hero. Each year we set one day aside and bring back to our mind the heroes who left our peaceful shores, not knowing what fate they would find. They each raised their hand and pledged to serve, no matter how high the cost. Each brother and sister who fought at their sides understood some would live and some would be lost. At Lexington and Concord and throughout the Revolution, The flame of freedom's eternal light was set ablaze by heroes' blood in our precious Constitution. Freedom marched forward into 1812 and then to the Civil War, where 800,000 gave their lives over slaves. No words can describe all the suffering they bore. World War I was the war that would end all wars, but only till World War II, calling 21 million of America's best who would not return home till the conflict was through. Nearly 500,000 heroes fell in battles far from home, on land, on sea, and from the skies. They made the ultimate sacrifice, this earth no more to roam. In Korea, man's freedom came under attack, leading 5 million more to once again serve. Over 34,000 were willing to die to bring freedom and peace, which all men deserve. Before the smoke of Korea was gone, Vietnam cried out for America's aid. 9 million more were called up to fight, causing 58,000 to lay down their lives. What a terrible price to be paid. For the next 15 years, there would be no more war, but this peace was not destined to last. Yet America's heroes stood ready to fight so that freedom would never be a thing of the past. Desert Storm and Desert Shield pulled our heroes once again to the Middle East and terrorists who hate their fellow men. This hate came home to strike our land on a bright September morn. Enduring freedom lives on even now, fought by present-day heroes who in 2001 were not even born. And beyond all the heroes who lie in repose, there are 82,000 whose fate no one knows. They are missing in action or prisoners of war, still alive in our memory. They will live evermore. Though Corona has kept us from our live presentation, we the people remain freedom's greatest nation. We still honor all heroes who did fight and did fall, and proclaim to their honor, all gave some gave all. God bless America.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam.